Make this make sense to me. How can you twist Jordan Peterson's ideas so blatantly to the point of obviously trying to set him up? Well, you're about to see exactly that, because this next interview on Jordan's reading of Order and Chaos in Daoist philosophy looks like it could have been conducted by a 10-year-old instead. I actually want to use this conversation to bury the myths around the entire misconception that arose after criticism over Jordan Peterson's Antidote to Chaos subtitle in his second book, but watch this before we get into it.
Now this, to me, seems like a different thing from what you were saying before, and it's just in the manner that you're expressing yourself now. I think it's much clearer now what you are actually against, and how you see these male-female dynamics.
Well, the funny thing is that I'm not so much against. You know, when I do my, this is why interviews are so strange. Mm-hmm. When I do my lectures, I don't talk politically. I'm not against things. I'm for individual people. Yeah. Individual people. So get out there, do your best, tell the truth, set the world in order, have a family, accept some responsibility, fix up your community, and take the beam out of your own eye before you worry about the mote in your neighbors.
Yeah. And I like that part of 12 rules and of everything that you're saying. But then there seems to be this other side, or it comes out in interviews sometimes, but it's also in 12 rules, where you equate the feminine with chaos.
I don't do that. No, that's ridiculous. The Daoists have done that for 3,000 years.
I know, but
right, it's not me.
No.
Right.
But you're selecting, right? You write a book, which is an antidote to chaos, and you're selecting the stories in which the feminine is chaos, and also I'm
observing and collecting the stories.
But it's adding up, right? So you also talk about the importance of the Bible, in which women are deemed subservient.
No, they're not. That's complete rubbish. How in the world could you possibly derive that idea from biblical readings? The most fundamental statement in the Bible, and this is a miraculous statement, it's absolutely incomprehensible that it was written some thousands of years ago. Men and women are made in the image of God. Not men. Men and women.
But you know that there's also passages in there which do posit the woman as subservient.
What passages are you referring to?
Well, where it's told to Adam and Eve that women will henceforth have to obey their husband.
Well, that wasn't what would you say? That wasn't a divine injunction. It was a terrible warning. Okay, it wasn't a statement about how society should be structured. It was a statement about the inevitability of that happening, because women were going to be vulnerable in pregnancy and in child raising.
First of all, you'll notice that none of the contentions that this journalist puts to Jordan have anything to do with his own ideas, and more an objection to him, even borrowing from certain texts or philosophies like the Bible or Daoism. But only someone that understands neither could accuse Jordan Peterson of supposed misogyny for it. There were quite a few publications back when 12 Rules for Life was actually published that came out implying that Jordan Peterson was out there calling women chaos, but that's hardly anything more than a setup, because the ancient Chinese philosophy of Daoism, where the idea of order and chaos comes from, is more than 2,500 years old. And no, it doesn't talk about masculine or feminine in the contemporary sense, any more than the phrase Mother Nature means nature's actually a female. It's a figure of speech that points to something deeper, which is the difference between the known and the unknown, or authority and opposition. And you know what's interesting? In the Daoist philosophy that infuses much of Jordan Peterson's writing, there's never an assertion made that one is better or more important than the other. Take, for example, the most famous Daoist symbol in existence, which is the yin and yang. The feminine yin and the masculine yang are equal in size and complementary to each other. But even more so, there's a little bit of feminine in the masculine and a little bit of masculine in the feminine, as represented by the dots. And to understand why Jordan Peterson would subtitle his book as an antidote to chaos, you need to understand the larger cultural context that it's in place. That's because an imbalance in what the problem is in modern society, chaos is what you see old stories and ideas crumble, chaos is the uncertainty of world peace you see. Chaos is human civilization trying to grapple with new and disruptive new technologies, and it's when you see an individual life as people become weaker and more psychologically volatile in dealing with life's difficulties. The crisis of modern society is a crisis of excess chaos, not order, at least in the West or in the United States. Jordan's subtitle will hardly work in a country like China or Saudi Arabia, where order reigns supreme with authority and stifled hierarchical governments.
Now, I understand your interpretation. You're interpreting the Bible and you're interpreting Nietzsche and bringing it all together. It's fine that you're doing that in your way. But can you understand that to women, it may feel like you are against them?
What do you mean, it may feel to women? Like, there's no injunction in that story.
No, but
that men have the right to lord it over women. No, it's not in the story.
It's not just this story, of course.
But what is it? There's heroic females in the entire corpus of the Old Testament, and there's no evidence whatsoever throughout the biblical corpus that women are any less worthy of the kingdom of God than men. And so this is part of the same thing. There's the pervasive notion that even the fundamental documents of Western civilization have this inbuilt patriarchal bias. Look, as far as I'm concerned, that statement that men and women are both made in the image of God, which gives them each a spark of divinity, out of that tiny little statement grew the entire idea of individual human rights. The idea that the state couldn't impose its purview past a certain limit, and that idea grew over thousands of years to provide the relatively free society that we have now. And to assume that is associated in some manner with patriarchal oppression, especially given the time when that was written, is just think about how unlikely it was that long ago those words were penned.
But Jordan, please listen to the question that I'm trying to pose, and it's not about this, it's about everything adding up, and that makes women feel that somehow you are against them. And wait a minute before you answer, because you're all about taking responsibility, and that it's very important to look at the consequences of what we do. And somehow a lot of women feel like you're against them. So what's going on there? What's your responsibility here?
You have no evidence whatsoever of what proportion of the people who are watching my videos or listening to my podcast or reading my books who are women feel that way. Your accusations are purely speculative.
It's not. It's not an accusation.
Sure,
no, it's just an observation. It was
but an observation based on what?
Well,
I have women I have dozens of women, hundreds of women who've written me letters thanking me for the books and for what they've done for their sons and for their husbands. And about 30% of the audiences to my shows are now women, and that's increasing as a consequence of the book.
Of course.
So I don't buy it.
Not all women.
Yeah, well, there's a small and unspecified percentage of women who may hold the perspective that you describe, but you have no idea what the percentage is, and you have no hard facts on it, and so there's no way of defending myself against it.
If you scratch the surface here, you see a degree of intellectual hubris that discounts the context that the Bible was placed in before criticizing it as regressive on gender politics. Sure, there's plenty you can point out that you believe is wrong from a modern lens, but try this next time you find yourself doing that. Texts or scriptures that are so foundational yet thousands of years old are often part of a developmental process that have led to our modern notions of equality, and to test that out, all you need is to see as many scriptures or codes of law that were being written as contemporaries to the Bible to realize that the Bible is actually one step in the progressive direction in some senses. For example, in Mesopotamia around the same time as the Bible, the Code of Hammurabi was the most important text that governed laws between men and women, and what you see there is a scripture that is being taken backwards rather than forwards. So while it may be easy to chastise biblical narratives and stories today, they're nestled as part of an entire chain of evolution that has ended up with the ideas of equality, individualism, and justice that we so cherish.
And the idea that I happen to identify the feminine with chaos is, why is that a problem? Chaos is no worse than order. Order is tyranny. Chaos is possibility. The mere fact that people don't do a close enough reading to understand that these two powers are equally balanced, in that order can be security or tyranny, and that chaos can be potential or uncertainty. The fact that people aren't reading carefully enough to understand that is not my problem. They could read it carefully enough to understand that. And to say that that's a fabrication on my part is absolutely foolish. I mean, for 40 years, let's say the mystic left has been enamored of the Daoist philosophy. Well, the philosophy that I'm putting forward is the Daoist philosophy. So how in the world can that be laid at my feet? And it's certainly not the only example of the symbolic utilization of masculinity for order. Look at it this way. Why do you think the feminists assume that we live in a patriarchy if they're not identifying masculinity with order? That's what they're doing. Well, they're doing it symbolically. They don't understand. It's a symbolic issue.
Yeah, but Jordan, you've been asked this question before, but I didn't think your answer, I wasn't quite convinced yet. Your book is an antidote to chaos and not an antidote to chaos and order, or not.
The next book's an antidote to order.
Yeah, it will be an antidote to order.
And the book isn't an antidote. The book is the antidote to chaos is not order.
No.
Right, that's not what the book's about. The antidote to chaos is the balance between order and chaos. Right? And the book says that repeatedly. It's impossible to read it and actually read it and not to come away with the conclusion that the position that I'm adopting is that the meaningful place to stand in life is halfway in order and halfway in chaos.
Even if you construe the Daoist philosophy and the narrow gender politics, it's a fact that both the yin and yang are complementary and equally important. None is better than the other or less worthy than the other. Even people like Carl Jung have spoken about the anima and animus, which is the masculine side in women, feminine side in men, and it's being in touch with both of your qualities is how you achieve a true balance between order and chaos inside you. That's what the Daoists have taught, that by intervening in the least in natural balance of order and chaos is how you achieve the ideal balance. A lot of Jordan Peterson's ideas are an amalgam of past philosophies that he's packaged and communicates for the current context, but that means he's going to have his share of people that simply can't see past the words of phrases that don't like without looking past them for the deeper meaning. And this interview is one of those rare moments when you see the consistent bad reading of his work visibly frustrated him at times. I think anyone that has read 12 Rules for Life and Antidote to Chaos needs to read Beyond Order as well, because those two books are like a yin and yang of their own. Even their covers in white and black, and it's a subtle sign from Jordan Peterson to his readers that those books make the most sense when understood together.